Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to get started in just a second here. I am so grateful to have you here. I am Hunter. I am one of your hosts and moderators here at Power to Fly. And we have a great guest, Megan. We're going to chat about a very important topic in just a moment. But before we do, welcome. We're just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. And we're going to jump in just a sec. So know that you can participate. You can turn your cameras on, and this is being recorded. So if you do turn your camera on, you may show up in the live stream, which we will send you a follow-up link so you can watch this, share it with your friends in the next couple days if you like. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. And that way, Megan and I can answer your questions live here in the chat. Please do. It's a very big topic, and we have a lot of pre-submitted questions too. So I encourage you to get those questions in early and often so that we can get to them. And if you have something you'd like to ask anonymously, you have the option to do so. You can go over to the chat, select my name, Hunter, and then from there, you can click on my name and then direct message me. It should have a little red notice, and I can ask a question anonymously on your behalf. Or if you have any questions or concerns that come up, you can DM me that way too, and we'll try to address it as swiftly as possible. Also, you can keep up with us on social media at Power to Fly on all the things, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And please know that this is a safe space. So when you're asking your questions and making your comments in the chat, please be mindful of others that we are sharing this Zoom room together, and we are all here to have a good, respectful time. So without further ado, we are very pleased to be chatting with Megan today. We're going to be, she is representing her company, Let's Get Checked. And we're going to be talking about, you can see here on the Power to Fly website, we have their landing page here, which I encourage you to check out. You can see other videos from Let's Get Checked, awesome resources, the job listings that are available. And Let's Get Checked is a virtual care company that allows customers to manage their health from home. As we're working from home, we might as well manage our health from home, right? They're empowering people with the care they need to live longer, happier lives. Today, Let's Get Checked is a leader in healthcare innovation with an end-to-end model, including manufacturing, logistics, lab analysis, affiliated physician support, and prescription fulfillment, which provides a seamless user experience and a convenient, reliable, and secure healthcare experience. We all know we want our healthcare records secure. That is very important. So today we have Megen Erwine. Megen Erwine has over 15 years of experience as a registered dietitian nutritionist. As Let's Get Checked dietitian, Megen supports Let's Get Checked customers to reach their health goals by implementing nutrition and lifestyle interventions. Megan's career has been focused on health promotion, chronic disease prevention, and overall well-being through nutrition coaching and program development. Megen is passionate about the power of nutrition and how it can transform our health. She believes in evidence-based, comprehensive approach, which we love evidence. I love seeing some data. So Megen, so glad to have you here. How are you today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with Power to Fly. I'm amazing. I'm in beautiful, sunny Tampa, Florida, and excited to have our chat today.
Great. Well, love that for us and for you, and I'm so glad you're here. So how this works, friends, is some of y'all submitted questions before the chat started. Yes, you, the participants. So I have a list of curated questions here on this doc that I'm going to go down and read in which they were received. And if you have any questions that come up, please do drop them in the chat, and we will pepper those in as well. So, Megen, this is such an important topic. It's very important to me as well. So I'm very grateful to chat about it with you today. And our first question on our list today is, how can nutrition impact our mental and emotional health? Let's jump right into it.
Exactly. What a great start to our session. So really, when we're thinking about emotional, mental, even brain health in general, and the relationship to nutrition, we're really talking about gut health here, which I know you probably weren't thinking me coming out of the bat talking about gut health, but that's really what we're focusing on. So the research, it's newer research and it's emerging research, but the research is there over the past 10, 15 years. It's really shown us how there's that connection between the gut and the brain. So it not only impacts a lot of areas of health, but certainly our mental health and our brain health as well. It's really neat and really exciting stuff. But we know that the brain and the gut are connected. They're connected through the vagus nerve. And nutrition and mental health are interconnected that way. So we know improved nutrition causes improvements in mental health and vice versa. Poor mental health can certainly lead to poor nutrition choices. So we really want to make sure that we have that good nutrition, that good sound nutrition to help support the gut health, to help connect that gut and brain. Things like depression, anxiety, stress, focus, cognitive function, diseases like Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, they are all impacted by our gut health, which is influenced by the foods that we're choosing.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, it's this, I think more people are accepting this now. It's becoming more of a known thing. It's like, oh, the things I put in my body have an impact on my body. How fascinating.
We are what we eat, right? We want to be
Yeah.
good quality people.
Yes, that's right. And listen to your gut. It seems more relevant of a phrase than ever, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent for mental health and well-being. And, I do a lot of things for myself. I'm a big proponent of therapy and meditation and exercise. Do I do all of them every day? No, I do not, but I do my best. And, over the past couple of years, my therapist started talking more and more about the vagus nerve and my gut. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What is this? So I love that we're talking about this today. And, we feel, we can talk more about it too, like how we these emotions, we're like, oh, I have the stress on my shoulders and stuff like that. We're talking about this stuff in our lives, but it shows up in all different sorts of ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, all those different personal care things that you mentioned are so incredibly important. But with given all the priorities that we have set, and nutrition being one of those as well, remembering to give ourselves some grace, and knowing that we can't do it all the time, and just reminding ourselves to make some things a priority are better than putting them all to the side.
Right. And it's like, I'm such an all or nothing type person. It's like, I'm learning that oh, even 5 minutes of meditation or 5 minutes of exercise or a push up today might be 2 push-ups tomorrow,
Or choosing the apple with your sandwich at lunch instead of the bag of chips makes a big difference.
It sure does. It sure does. And so, I think it's also great, with someone like you and the resources that you can continue to share with us is helping with accountability is really helpful. And so I'll be really excited to hear more about that as we jump in too.
For sure.
So this question, you and I chatted for a moment before too, and we're like, wow, well, this is a really important one. So someone asked, what's the relation between nutrition and mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety?
Yeah, so I'll try not to eat up the whole hour by answering this question because I've got lots to say, but it's all very relevant and such an amazing question. So I'm happy that we're able to cover this during this session. So really, when we're looking at the relationship between nutrition and mental health, we can look at 2 different things here. And one I've already alluded to is that gut health and how incredibly important that is. So I want to spend some time explaining to the audience what gut health is and how we best support gut health with our nutrition. But there are some very specific nutrients and foods that we can focus on that can really help with anxiety and depression. So let's start with that gut health. So the first thing I want you to think about is that more than 90% of our serotonin receptors are found in our gut, over 90%. So unhealthy foods are going to interfere with that happy hormone. These foods disrupt our gut by increasing that harmful bacteria bacteria, and they're decreasing that good gut bacteria. So that two-way communication that your very smart therapist told you about, that vagus nerve, that is kind of getting disrupted there. And the brain is really that communication there is just kind of changing the way that those nutrients are getting out into our body like they should be, and they're not able to be where they're supposed to be to help us with our overall well-being or some of those specific areas. So I'm sure you're all wondering what you can do as far as your nutrition to help support that good, healthy gut bacteria. And I have some do's and don'ts for you. As a dietitian, I really do like to focus on things that we should be doing rather than focusing on all those things you shouldn't be doing. So we'll start with the include first. So we want to focus on things called probiotics. Probiotics are found in food, and probiotics are what the good bacteria are that we need in our guts. They're found in foods like yogurt, tempeh, sauerkraut, kefir, kimchi, apple cider vinegar, kombucha, if you're a kombucha drinker. Those are fermented foods. A lot of those are fermented foods. We don't, some of them maybe aren't everyday foods for a lot of people in the audience, but we don't need a ton of them. Maybe just a couple tablespoons per day can help support that good gut bacteria. What I do pretty regularly is I'll include Greek yogurt for a snack or a part of my lunch. And I also eat a lot of kimchi. I've grown to love kimchi, actually. I put it on my eggs, or I'll just grab a couple bites of it, just knowing that the benefit that it can provide. Kombucha is another great thing to sip on. Some people are always asking me, what can I drink other than water? And that's a great one that's full of probiotics that can help support your gut health as well. Somebody's asking in the chat about supplements. So, supplements are one thing that can work for some people, absolutely, but I like the approach that we're focusing on food first. There's so many other great nutrients and benefits from these types of foods, but some of us may have a hard time getting them, and supplements might be an option, but it's very individualized. I definitely don't want you all to hear that you need to run out and buy probiotics, but really focusing on some of those probiotic foods. Let's see, with those probiotics, to keep them healthy and intact in your gut, we need to feed them, and we feed them with what we call prebiotics. Prebiotics are things that have fiber. So fiber is what feeds those probiotics. We want to think about a diversity in plant fibers, eating a rainbow of colors. All those colors represent different nutrients and in different ways to support our gut health. We want to consume something called resistant starches. Those are starches, again, that are going to feed that probiotic and support that gut health. Those are things like potatoes, oats, beans. One of the ones that I use regularly is cooking rice and letting it cool. That resistant starch comes out. So instead of cook your rice earlier in the day and eat it for dinner, and that will help with that. Lots of other foods like onions and garlic, lentils, chickpeas. Chickpeas are a great one. They're making everything out of chickpeas now. We eat chickpea pasta a lot here in our family. And artichokes. Those are all really good sources of prebiotics to help feed that probiotic and keep that gut health intact and healthy. Some other things that we can do, including healthy fats, is another great way to help improve anxiety and depression and help support that gut health. Things like salmon, extra virgin olive oil, avocado is one of my favorite healthy fats. There are specific spices as well. Oregano, saffron. I don't use saffron often, but I know it's really good to help with mood boosting and decreasing anxiety. And turmeric is another good one as well. Incorporating some good clean proteins. It's interesting in other countries that incorporate a lot of fish, they consume a lot of fish, there's an association with a lot less mental health. So, that connection is not exactly established, but we see that correlation. So eating more fish can help improve mental health issues as well. And a lot of people might be happy to hear this one, dark chocolate. So yes, our dark chocolate actually helps support gut health, and dark chocolate, as long as it doesn't have a ton of added sugars or it doesn't have any of those added bad fats, the process for it to become the dark chocolate is actually fermentation. So it's another fermented food that we can enjoy and help support our gut health. So when we're thinking about foods that we want to incorporate, those are where we're really thinking as far as support to gut health. I'll take a pause there before I talk about some of those foods that disrupt gut health to see if there's any other follow-up questions we can discuss.
Totally. And the chat is blowing up. I also love that. Who doesn't want to talk about food? It's the best. It's the
I
best. I
know.
love talking. I was just reading on about food blogs, and I was like, oh wait, I'm literally about to go do nutrition talk. My subconscious is getting me primed in the mood. I love people are shouting out some of their favorite foods that you were talking about. Beans, rice, oats,
Perfect.
And though it's also good affordable options that someone highlighted, similar with chickpeas. Someone asked, does coconut oil help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Coconut oil is one of those good fats for us.
Awesome. Love it. I love coconut oils only on very specific foods because it does taste so coconutty to me.
Yeah.
But in the right place, I'm like, ooh, this is perfect.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't recommend cooking your eggs in it, but other ways it's good.
I did that once accidentally.
Yeah. And I don't, sometimes as a society, we just tend to hear something and really run with it, which is great. But just by saying coconut oil is good doesn't mean we need to go putting it on everything all day, every day either. So it's still very calorically dense. It is a saturated fat, but there is a different type of saturated fat, which has some benefits as well.
Totally. And I think that's a really important distinction is everything in moderation. And also there are fats that are good for us and healthy for us. People are oh, I want to cut all the fat out of my diet. It's well, that's not healthy at all, actually.
Right. Yeah. If you want to go gung-ho with anything, fruits and vegetables. Have at it.
Yeah. It's hard to OD on fruits and vegetables, right? Let's see. Someone gave a shout out to turmeric and saffron. Love that. Someone asked any types of fish that you would recommend, actually, because you were highlighting fish.
Yeah, definitely. So some of those fatty fish like salmon, I don't eat a whole lot of mackerel, but that's another good one. Tuna, sardines, another one that I'm not a huge fan of, but I know people that really enjoy sardines as well. But those 4 are going to be your tops when it comes to those omega-3s. But like I said, any fish is good.
And do you have any maybe vegetarian options for folks that you would recommend that aren't the meat eaters?
Yeah. So some plant-based forms of omega-3s would be things like walnuts, flax seeds, hemp seeds, chia seeds. You can get a good amount of omega-3s from those as well.
Good. Also more good gut health too, because there's fiber in there. And I have a little puppy, and every time there's a weird dropping, you're like, oh, what's happening? And I was Googling, and people are like, mash up some chia seeds, and that can help firm up the the things there, and pumpkin as well for that. Yeah. Let's see. Dark chocolate. It's getting a lot of shout outs. Obviously, I love a dark chocolate moment. Let's see. Okay, great. That's the chat blowing up. I love it.
I guess I can move on to things that we kind of want to avoid that would disrupt our gut health.
Yeah, I would love that. Before you do, I am curious, you did touch on the probiotic, supplements versus all these great ways we can get them in foods. And I'm curious too, this is for me as well. I'm curious, can you do too much probiotic? Is that really a thing?
Not by food. That's another reason to focus on food. With the supplements, I guess there's probably a threshold with it, an upper tolerable limit. It's hard to measure at the top of my head though, because I know they come in billions.
Crazy.
But, yeah.
I don't even know what this means.
Yeah. So, sticking to the food sources and just not overdoing supplements. If you do choose to do supplements, you'd be safe for the most part.
Yeah. It's wild how much that is. And I apologize. Using the word crazy is not really appropriate for that. So I apologize. So it's wild how many, how many probiotics are in there.
Yeah. And there's so many different strains and they all do something different. And it's amazing. Yes. It really is. I'm happy that it's getting the attention that it deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk about, so those are all the yummy, good things. I was jotting a lot of notes down. Maybe you could fire off some of the things to avoid. Probably some of these are going to be a little familiar that I actually enjoy eating, unfortunately.
And when you find yourself kind of in a rut of consume or over consuming some of these foods we're about to talk to that can hurt your gut health, the good news is in just 48 hours, you can see your gut health turn. So if you come off of a vacation or, a weekend where you just really lost it as far as your food choices, getting back in order over over just a couple days can help support that gut health we're looking for. But as many probably are guessing in the audience, we want to avoid added sugar as one of those major ones that is definitely going to disrupt our gut health. And, those aren't just obvious sugary things or obviously sweet things. We want to get in the habit of checking all labels, even savory foods, for added sugar, because it's literally snuck in just about everything and everywhere. When you go into the grocery store, 80% of what's in that grocery store has some sort of added sugar in it. And now our new label does pull out added sugar here in the US. So you're able to see that a little bit more specifically. It's a little bit easier to find.
You got a new label? I'm sorry, can you pause? I'm not familiar with that.
Newer. So it came out a few years ago, but before that, the label before that, came out in the 80s. So we went a good 30 years using the same label.
Oh my gosh. And the amount of sugar that has been added to the food in America in the past 30 years is unmeasurable.
Right. Absolutely. And, those added sugars just really work against your mood. They even cause stress in our body, physically and mentally. So just try not to overdo the added sugars, and remembering to look for them in all types of foods, because they're not just only in those obvious ones. And then processed foods. Processed foods are not only full of added sugars, but they're also full of, processed seed oils like canola oil. Again, I don't want anybody to hear that all processed foods are off limits, because processed foods are defined as anything with more than one ingredient. Most of us don't have the luxury of growing our own food. Some processed foods are okay, but those overly processed foods are when we run into the problem. Something else that can really disrupt our good bacteria and our gut health are those high glycemic carbohydrate foods. And those are carbohydrate foods that are broken down very quickly in our body. They rapidly increase our blood sugars. They spit out our insulin levels. So those are at our higher level, and those are going to not only disrupt our gut health, but that kind of also throws off the way we're feeling. It creates those highs and lows in our energy, that brain fog that we might be feeling, or that fatigue that we might be feeling as well. And another one, we talked a little bit about added sugars. That doesn't mean we need to run off to the artificial sweeteners, because those artificial sweeteners are really killing our gut health, artificial ingredients in general. So not only do they hurt your gut health, but they actually drive anxiety as well. And last but not least, we talked about good fats. Well, the bad fats are going to hurt those that good gut bacteria, and those are things like trans fat or partially hydrogenated oils. Again, those processed seed oils like canola oils as well. So those are the ones that we want to kind of limit to really help promote good gut bacteria.
Love that. And we got lots of I love this. This is maybe like the most active chat I've had in a very long time. We love talking about food and how it helps us and how it, affects our days, right? So question about protein shakes. Just throwing that in there. Their question, Ronnie asked, are protein shakes good to replace meals? I'm not a cooker, I'm an eater, LOL. I feel you there, Ronnie.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a basic formula when it comes to what a meal is and what a meal is intended to be. We want to make sure that we're including all those macronutrients. So that would be a source of protein, a source of carbohydrate, a complex carbohydrate, a low glycemic carbohydrate, one that's full of fiber. We want to have some healthy fat there, and we want to try to have some fruits or vegetables as well. Some leafy greens would be great. So as far as a smoothie is concerned, maybe you have a good quality plant-based protein powder that you're using, you have a banana for a carbohydrate, you have some of those chia seeds for a healthy fat, and then you're throwing in some spinach to make it a green smoothie. And now, and whatever your liquid of choice, so maybe it's almond milk. But now you're including all those components, and that makes it a meal. So that's what I want you to, that's kind of that basic formula to establish, is it a meal, or am I leaving out some of those major components that doesn't make it a meal? Whether you're using a fork or a straw, they both could work.
Love that.
Yeah, I also saw a good question pop up about more of those natural sweeteners like stevia and monk fruit. And those can work perfectly well if you find those to be helpful in sweetening some foods. With anything, we don't want to overdo it. But yeah, that's definitely something that would be a-okay as far as some of those natural sweetener options.
Great. Love that. Okay, cool. So those are some of the ones we want to avoid. So now is there more that you'd like to discuss about like how the relationships to depression and anxiety are activated there?
Yeah, it's really just, like I said, that vagus nerve. It kind
Yeah.
of, for lack of better words, clogs it up, doesn't allow the nutrients to go where they need to be going, specifically
Mhm.
in this case, as far as mental health, the brain, we're focusing on that mental health, brain health, emotional health. If it can't get the nutrients that it needs, then we can, kind of exacerbate some of those issues that we might be feeling. There are some specific nutrients as well. And again, not something that I'm recommending that you run out and buy all the supplements for. We definitely want to focus on more of that food first approach. You can test your nutrients, and actually Let's Get Checked has some micronutrient and vitamin and mineral testing that it can, that is something that you're interested in learning more about. You can certainly come to our company to find out more for. But some big ones that we've seen in research is folate deficiency, and that's B vitamins in general, but folate is one that can, if you're deficient, can cause mood disorders. Folate is a really good source of folate are those dark green leafy vegetables. So even more reason to incorporate those. Magnesium is another really big one. Research shows that magnesium plays a huge role in depression and anxiety. Spinach, cashews, salmon, again, avocado, one of my favorites again, is another really good source of magnesium. Another B vitamin is vitamin B6, and that one can really mess with some stress levels as well if you're not getting enough of the B6. That's things like poultry, nuts, even onions have some B6 in them as well. And zinc's another good zinc's kind of like our hot nutrient right now.
Right.
Vitamin D and zinc, we are hearing a lot about them, and again, it's very exciting to kind of put them under the microscope and see what they can do for us. We talked about those omega-3s and how important those are, not only the marine sources but also the plant-based sources, and fiber in general. I think I've mentioned quite a few times as well. When in doubt, try to increase your fiber. Not only can it help support that gut health, but it can also help with that blood sugar control and insulin control that we talked about as well.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Someone asked in the chat, will there be a recording of this meeting will be shared? Yes, absolutely. There will be. We're firing off a lot of useful stuff. So there'll be a follow-up link within the next couple of days. So you will have
Great.
access to rewatch this, to share it. Mary asked about, we were mentioning the vagus nerve a few times. Could you give us maybe a little, without going too far down the rabbit hole in science, but the layman's terms of what the vagus nerve is and what it does, and now the things we're learning about it?
Yeah, so the vagus nerve is basically, like I said, it's the largest part of the nervous system that really connects those the gut to the brain, and it has all those different neurons in it that help trigger the different reactions in our body. So again, for lack of better words, if it gets kind of clunked up, then we don't have those triggering happening as seamlessly as it could be. Like I said, supporting that gut health and supporting it through nutrition is one way just to keep it working at its optimal level.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you for that. Okay.
Dryer lint. Like,
Yes,
yes.
exactly. It's like dryer lint. You got to clean it out. That's amazing. Okay. Is there anything else on this topic before I move on to another question that you'd like to touch on that we haven't yet?
I think the last thing before we move on is just the importance of hydration. So there's definitely an association between depression and dehydration. So making sure that you're staying well hydrated is one way that can help with your mental health and help ward off depression. At a minimum, most people want to be having at least 60 ounces of water a day, and also incorporating some water-rich foods is another way to help keep yourself hydrated. So things like cucumber and zucchini and melons, and again, those fruits and vegetables that are all water-based also aid to hydration.
Yeah, and then they're also filled with lots of good vitamins and minerals as well.
And fiber. You got
And
it.
fiber. I love too, you said earlier about this, you said something along the lines of, it was really wonderful, like a rainbow of foods, and there is like, if you, I'm sure, and maybe you all have something like this. I don't know, people can Google too, like if like the color wheel of like food and stuff like that is really great because it's like, oh, I forgot about beets, or whatever.
Right.
There's like foods on there. You're like, oh, what are other purple foods I can
Yeah.
eat? It just makes it a little more fun, especially if you have kids too. You're like, okay, let's get the different colors going.
Yep. And there's lots of, the American Heart Association has a really good color wheel of all the different fruits and vegetables. And two thoughts there. I used to run a family nutrition program a few years back at another employer. And that was one of the games we played. We would break up into groups and each family would be assigned a color and they would list as many as they could. And everybody was always astonished by, they'd come up with a decent list, but the actual list that we could do, there was so many of them.
Yeah.
And then something, I have 3 children at home, and something we do is we make rainbow salads all the time, where they go in the refrigerator and they find a fruit or a vegetable that could go in our salad that represents each color of the rainbow. So what we're looking at there are flavonoids. So flavonoids are what give fruits and vegetables their color. And that's what really the health component we're looking at.
I love that. That's a new word for me. Flavonoid. Love that. Okay, cool. So we're right at the half hour mark, friends.
Oh, gosh.
Time flies when you're
It
eating
does.
well. So if you have any questions, thank you for all your participation so far in the chat. I love it. Keep it coming. And if you have any more questions, Megan and I would love to answer them, or Megan will love to answer them, and I will sit and nod my head as Megan drops the food truth. So in the meantime, I'm going to go back to our pre-submitted questions, which some of y'all sent in advance. So thank you for that. Another question we had was, can a negative work environment impact your nutrition? What an interesting take on negative work environments.
Another very great and relevant question. But yes, absolutely. I think that those stressors can certainly impact how you're feeling, not only mentally, but also physically as well. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just learn how to cope with that negativity, and focus on elements that we can control. There's so many things that are out of our control, and maybe the negative work environment or stress that your work brings is one of those things, but there are a lot of elements that you can control that can help you work through that feeling. In addition to your nutrition, a lot of the strategies that we've already talked about, but sleep is huge, exercise is huge, and those things can certainly help you cope through that. One of my favorite ways to deal with stress is smiling and laughter. So there's research on this stuff, which is, just mind-boggling that we research smiles and laughing, but there is, and the research shows that even a fake smile can send those happy hormones out, and smiling is contagious. So if you smile to somebody, that may make them smile and just kind of change them and put them in a better mood or put them in a better space. So really neat stuff there too.
It is pretty wild. It's a fine line, obviously. Like there's the phrase, like, fake it till you make it. Yes, we do want to do that sometimes. And it is wild that like, we know the phrase muscle memory. It's real, right? Like even the memory of, okay, I'm going to smile and do this. You can start to feel those, those good vibes coming through a little bit. Obviously, we don't want to rely on that alone, but again, everything in moderation, right?
Right. It's one area, and focusing on our senses in general can really help improve your mental health outside of just the smiling. Nature gives off the colors of blue and green, and those are soothing, and those are cooling, and those are de-stressing, anti-anxiety types of colors, and sunshine outside of what vitamin D synthesis can do for us. But having that sunshine can really help boost your mood. So it might not be a win-all for everybody, but it's certainly things that can't hurt, and there's kind of the fundamentals of when we're looking at improving our mood and helping with our mental health. As far as smells, there's again some interesting studies that have been done, and there was a hospital just kind of quickly recap this. There was a hospital that found, of course, their patients were highly stressed, very anxious when they went in for a closed MRI. So they ended up investigating a little bit more. They did a study and they found that when they put a diffusing vanilla, their patient's stress levels went down drastically. So maybe a candle at work or a diffuser at your office can really just kind of help balance it out for you a little bit more.
Oh, I love those. I have one in each room.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big scent person, and I
Yes.
like finding, like there's many different places you can get it. There's, you can do your Googling. This is not an ad, but there's a one that I really like that's female owned and operated, and you can check them out. That's really cool, for small businesses, and you want to make sure you're getting like good organic products that you're aerating, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And all the smells of fall right now too are
Yeah.
lovely.
Yes, that's good. You can pretend you're having fall in Florida. I love too what's important that you mentioned, because you were talking about, going outside and, nature and sunshine, and what that is. What I'm inferring from that information too is like, if you're working from home, for instance, as well, and like how to cope with stress, what I'm hearing in there is self-care and taking breaks, it's like, or maybe like planning a walk before you start your day, and then like going, we have later a question about like my lunch breaks and mindful eating and stuff like that we can get into. But I think it's really important to touch on, right? Like,
Yeah.
budgeting out time for our overall health, right?
Yeah, for sure. Again, not just physically, but mentally, any exercise, any movement, our bodies are made to move. And, a lot of people say that it's the most underused tool when it comes to mental health is just moving our bodies. Again, it increases those happy hormones. And unfortunately, especially even working from home, we get so much done while we're sitting down. So just trying to think of ways that we can move our body a bit more. It doesn't need to be, hitting the gym hard each and every day. It's just taking advantage of some of those opportunities that we can move our body. Like you said, schedule different walk breaks throughout the day, or wear a wearable where it can count your steps and challenging yourself, or just being aware of what you're doing and how you can make some improvements there. Doing certain tasks while standing, folding the laundry while standing, or making phone calls while you're walking around instead of another thing that you're doing at the desk. So those are all just ways that we can get up and move a little bit, because again, we're getting a lot done right now, but we're all mostly sitting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you're doing like an audio call, like you said, like laundry is a great one to do, I find, because it's quiet and I'm doing a thing and it's not distracting to someone on the other side, like finding those quiet activities that I can be moving and being productive, but also like, like doing it standing. There's a phrase I really like, because, sometimes maybe, like you said, we were talking about like stressful work environments. Maybe I'm getting caught up in something that I can't control. And there's a phrase that's helped me in the past, which is move a muscle, change a thought, right? So like if I get stuck, I can just like, okay, I'm going to go for a little 5-minute walk, 5 minutes. That's it. And it helps me get out of my head and change the thought.
For sure. Definitely. I like that.
Yeah. Okay. So here's that next question about mindful eating. So what do you mean by being present when we eat? How unhealthy is it to not pause when eating? I usually just have lunch at my desk while working, writes this person.
Yeah. So I don't want to say how unhealthy it is not to pause. But when we think about just being a little bit more mindful, being more mindful with even those food choices is important. Being present and being mindful with, it sounds so silly because we're eating, so of course we're chewing. But if you sit down and really think about how many chews you're taking, it's probably not nearly as many. We try to get at least about 25 chews in, believe it or not. And what's important about that is not only are you being mindful with it, but digestion starts in your mouth. So if you chew too quickly and swallow too quickly, your body is like, whoa, I didn't even realize that we're starting this digestion process. So chewing nice and slowly and being able to savor that meal are some ways that can help you be a little bit more mindful and present with it as well. I think as far as those distractions are concerned, what can happen is when we're distracted by eating while we're working or other screens or other distractions, we're really just ignoring our natural hunger cues. So it can cause us to overeat or maybe eat when we're not hungry, as if we were a little bit more mindful with it, we'd be able to recognize those things a little bit more. And as you said earlier too, kind of take advantage of those breaks. They're given to us for a reason. So take that time to eat, take that time to take a little walk and get yourself reset and rejuvenated for the afternoon.
Yeah. Mindful eating is such a interesting experience. If you haven't done it,
Right.
it's really kind of weird at first, and then it can be kind of fun and very helpful. It's kind of bizarre if, just like not doing anything else and just focusing on one thing. At least I'll speak for myself, I'm such a multitasker a lot of time. And so it takes continual practice to
Sure.
just do one thing.
Right, to chew for 25 chews. So it seems
Yeah.
like it's for ages.
Right.
Or trying to stretch your meal out to be 30 minutes long. Even 10 minutes can seem like a really long time, depending on how quickly you typically eat. Yeah, 25 chews is
25
forever.
chews is forever. Funny. I did this. I used to be a smoker of cigarettes and nicotine and stuff, and vaping and all that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I don't anymore. And one of the
Right.
things that helped me quit actually was mindful smoking, which is it's a similar idea. And you can do your Googling and research about this, folks, if you're in a state where you're looking to quit. It helped me. And what it is like they did a study. It's a very similar concept where, well, these day and age, what are most people doing when they're smoking? They're on their phone. They're distracting. And what is smoking? A distraction from whatever you were doing. So it's a distraction on top of another distraction. So when they ask people, they're like, don't quit. We're not asking you to stop. Just only focus on smoking when you're doing it. And people started to report, oh, this tastes terrible. I feel anxious. Like actually being aware of, on the other side of the coin, like mindful eating, we're like, oh, this tastes delicious. And I'm really like noticing these things. We're like mindful smoking. People are like, oh, this is terrible. Why am I doing this?
Wow.
And I also had that experience over time. It didn't happen overnight, but doing it repeatedly, I was like, oh, talk about anxiety. I would smoke and then I would free write. And all of my writing was just bonkers. Like it was totally anxiety induced thinking that wasn't there before I started smoking.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It was a wild ride. It helped me get to where I am. And, but I think it's really the reason I bring it up is, we're talking about mindfulness and we're also like really listening to our bodies, I think is really important, right? To get these social cues, or these, not social cues, these cues from like the vagus nerve and from our bodies, we're really starting to understand like, oh, all of this stuff is in relationship to each other. And I can be like a little data mining scientist, like, and here's my petri dish, right? Of like figuring it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, congrats on quitting.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, friends. So if you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I love this next question, which is, and I struggle with this too. How do you make the time to plan, shop for, and prepare a variety of healthy meals during a busy week? How can we build a realistic routine? Because I love too, you mentioned earlier about giving ourselves some grace.
Absolutely.
We can't do everything all the time.
Right. Yeah. So, making it a priority. If it's something important to you, we need to put that priority on it. But yes, giving yourself some grace. Life gets in the way of living. I say all the time, and it may not work every week, but when you can do it, put forth some effort and try. And practice really helps out there too. The more you do it, the better you become at it. What I always recommend is not biting off too much at one time. Starting with,
I love your choice of phrase there. Yes. Don't bite off too much. Don't bite more off.
Unintended. But no, seriously, starting with that meal that really might be the most difficult for you. So is it breakfast? Is it lunch? Is it dinner? What one do you find yourself having the most trouble with? And just focus there and come up with maybe 2 or 4 different options that could work. For example, breakfast. Okay, let me make a egg and vegetable casserole that will feed me for a couple breakfasts. I can make some overnight oats. That way I have if I'm feeling something savory or feeling something sweet for breakfast, I can have those options. Or if I have zero time in the morning, let me get, some fresh fruit, some bananas, some apples, and some good quality protein bars. And I can grab that out the door and eat in the car. Not the most mindful experience, but better than, driving through a fast food restaurant or something like that. So just kind of, take it meal by meal, snack by snack, just focus on some things that will work for you. And it doesn't mean, I think a lot of times when we think about like meal prep and preparing our meals for the week, we envision, sitting down Sunday, making lists, going to the grocery store, cooking for the entire day. And it doesn't have to be that experience. You can think about those things on your commute, in a shower, like wherever you have a couple minutes to think about it. And the small steps will definitely lead up to big changes. And something I've started that I struggled with years before is this past January, I bought myself a meal prep book. And basically it's just a journal where I write down what I'm going to be eating that week. So I put my breakfast ideas, my lunch ideas, and definitely my dinner ideas. And then I go back to it. You find yourself in that rut, like, oh my gosh, what can I make? And then you have weeks and weeks and weeks of things that you've made before. And not all of them are like super involved meals or anything, but it just gives you a library of ideas to fall back on for ones that that worked and ones that you didn't, or that didn't end up working out for you.
I love that. There's the data again, right? There's the data. Yeah, for me, I need like a really simple breakfast. Mm-hmm. I forget lunch all the time, so I need something that's like healthy and like a salad or a sandwich. Like I just need something that I can make without thinking too much, mm-hmm. or just grab, because I'll often skip lunch. And then dinner is like, that's where it's like, ooh, let's have the savory meal. That's kind of my like arc in my meal day. But then I go for those sweets after dinner. That's when I'm like,
dark chocolate.
Dream, yeah.
Yeah, I think lunch, I always say lunch is the most overlooked meal. Most of us have an idea, get in our swing for breakfast, dinner's kind of planned out, and then lunch, it's like, what do I do? Right. But there's lots of options, even again, I had some lunch quickly before I came on here, and following that basic formula, I had cottage cheese as my protein, I had a banana as my complex carb, and I had almond butter on my banana as my healthy fat. That works. It's it's a very quick meal. It meets all those aspects of that basic formula, and it keeps you full and satisfied, and it's gut healthy as well.
I love that. I also had a banana, but I didn't dress it like you did. Those are the pro tips. Cottage cheese. And what was the butter you used? What did you say?
Almond butter.
Almond butter.
Yeah.
Nice.
We always have almond butter and peanut butter.
Yeah, we love peanut butter, and so does my dog.
Yeah.
I love, Mary said earlier, the body is a very loud talker when we were talking about the data. And I think I like that much more than I think I use the disgusting term as a petri dish. Mary is much more eloquent. And then Bash or Bosch, pardon me if I'm mispronouncing your name, asked how much of a culprit is sodium. So I think sodium is a bit of a buzz thing right now too, because we want again, like fats, right? We don't want no sodium or salt in our diet. We need that like healthy balance. And it is also, things are packed with sodium. Right. So where do we help us, a wise one?
So again, sodium is in everything. It's a natural electrolyte that's even found in spinach. But again, we're getting way too much of it. And some people are very sensitive to sodium, causing high blood pressure. And then that could be, an issue as far as heart health is concerned. So, most people aren't getting too much sodium from the natural foods or the salt shaker. It's really those overly processed foods and dining out. One meal from dining out, whether it's fast food, a sit-down restaurant, anything in between, fancy, inexpensive, you name it, dining out can have 3-4 times the amount of sodium that's recommended in one day. So it's just the overexposure of it. Somebody is diagnosed with low sodium, so they get to have some extra salt into their diet. So it's just kind of the overexposure of it, and just again being kind of mindful of where it's coming in your diet, if you're sensitive to it, if it's impacting your health, as well as something else is that just kind of popped in my head is dehydration. So dehydration, salt, it can dehydrate you, and then dehydration has some mental health issues or mental health correlations as well. So being careful and staying nice and hydrated as well, like we talked about.
Absolutely. And I'm actually Nava, if that's how you pronounce your name. Forgive me if that's how you mispronounce it. I was also diagnosed with low sodium, which is unusual, I think.
Yeah.
And I was so obviously talk to your primary care. Everybody is different. And for me, she was like, "Do you drink a lot of water?" I was like,
Mhm.
"I do. I drink an obscene amount of water and seltzer and stuff like that." And she was like, "Do me a favor, just cut back a little less because you're probably
Yeah.
already doing more, and let's find out." So more will be revealed. I haven't had the tests yet. This is a newer development, but she had found that some patients that were overhydrating were actually flushing out too much
Mhm.
sodium.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'll let you know.
Yeah. If you need any help, let me know.
I will. I will. I'll follow up with you. Okay, let's see. And I think that's so important. The eating out, it doesn't matter if it's fancy or if it's fast food. It's just packed full of sodium
Yeah.
because there's so much flavor, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
If you've ever
Activates
watched,
flavor.
yeah, if you've ever watched a cooking show on TV, what do they say? Oh, it'd be better with more salt.
Let's talk about salt for a second before we leave this topic. There's 100 million different kinds of salts, and some are like some are more salty, some are less salty. Do you have any opinion on this as a foodie?
No, not so much. The main thing is that some are going to provide some additional nutrients, like the Himalayan, the pink salt, it has some
Yeah.
additional minerals in it, and
Oh,
our sea
okay.
salt is going to have some additional minerals in it. But as far as that sodium content, it's pretty much equal across the different types of salt.
Great. I love people are like resonating with the over and under hydration. Everybody's different. Great. So, friends, we
Absolutely.
only have 10 minutes left. We've gone through half of our questions, and Megan and I were like, there's no way we're gonna get through all of
We knew
these.
it.
We need to do like a 5 hour talk. So please come back, Megan, and it'd be so great. So, friends, if you have any more questions, now is the time. If not now, when? So please drop them into the chat, and we would love to chat with them. Megan, I'm going to go down the list. You have that list too, right? Because so if there's
Yeah.
any that I can drop it in for you as well. If there's any that you really want to talk about and that I am not seeing, please just be like, okay, next one is this. I'm going to DM you that list there so you have the
Okay.
okay, so the next one, okay, so we talked about meal prep, making realistic things. I love that. Okay, this is a great practical question. What does a balanced diet look like? Can you share some tips for creating quick and easy meals? Well, we kind of touched on that a little bit. We talked about the rainbow. Is there anything else you want to add? I think we kind of talked about quick and easy meals.
Yeah, I think another question that was on the list that was a little bit different was specifically about caffeine.
Oh, here we go.
So
How much caffeine is too
yeah.
much?
um, so everybody's different. Everybody has a different
Yes.
threshold with caffeine. Everybody's different in general, regardless to caffeine or not. But caffeine can keep us awake, as we know. But everybody, it can affect everybody differently. So it can stay in your system for up to 12 hours for some people.
Yeah.
So for some, having it much earlier in the day is going to be helpful. I'm one of those people. I like coffee. I have a coffee in the morning, but if I have anything afternoon, I won't sleep that night. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that and how your body tolerates that caffeine, or how much caffeine that you can handle, because you certainly don't want it to interfere with your sleep. Lack of sleep is absolutely going to contribute to poor nutrition choices and can certainly impact your mood and emotional health. So, sleep is really high up there as far as that is concerned. There is some good pros and positives with coffee. So it does have an association with lower risk of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. It's loaded with plant compounds that are important for brain health. Those flavonoids we talked about, there's flavonoids in coffee as well. And it really helps with cognitive acuity too, as we probably have all kind of experienced before. And another big source of caffeine would be tea. Tea does have EGCG, which is another component that has also shown a lot of different health benefits, including protection from Parkinson's and Alzheimer's as well. So now keep in mind as well, we're talking about black coffee, green tea, not necessarily coffee shop lattes that are full of added sugars and not so healthy fats. But yeah, it's really just kind of finding your threshold, how much you receive the benefit from without it interfering with your sleep patterns.
It's so important, right? And learning what you said, you're like, you can't drink it after noon. For me, it varies a little bit, but I can't drink it at, like, I try to cut off like no later coffee than 4 p.m., but I go to bed at like midnight. So depends on what your clock is, right? If you're like, I need to be asleep by 9 p.m., winding that coffee clock back or that caffeinated tea clock back could really help our sleep patterns. And like you said, without sleep, we can't be healthy.
Right, exactly. There's no way around that.
Yeah, there is, as I like to say, there is no substitution for sleep.
No substitution.
There are alternatives, but there are no substitutions.
Yeah, lots of sciencey things happen during that sleep, so it's important that we have it.
I love that. Lots of sciencey things. Earlier, someone said the tree things, which is their reference for like greeny goodness and be goodness. I was like, oh, I love that.
That's good.
Someone asked about too, like the different degrees of caffeine between tea and coffee. I think coffee tends to have more. Is that right?
Yeah. Coffee naturally has more than tea, but not anything like some of those energy drinks that are out there. I definitely wouldn't recommend leaning on those too heavily for any sort of benefit. And it's kind of that synthetic caffeine for the most part too, which isn't going to provide any of that benefit for you either.
Yeah, and a lot of them also have those artificial sweeteners that we talked about as well. So we have just 5 minutes left, friends. So we're about to wrap it up in just a few minutes, but we're going to ask a few more questions. We asked some questions to Megen beforehand as well. And so we're going to highlight some of those. So here we are. Getting real. I feel like we've been pretty real, so we're going to say extra real with Megen. So talking about the Let's Get Checked, how would you describe the culture in one word? Progressive. So now that's how you wrote it. So I'm going to let you have more than one word if you'd like to expand on that.
Yes, I love more than one words, as you can probably tell.
It's progressive. I'm like, ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, so I actually just celebrated my 1 year with the company, and it has been an amazing past year. What I mean by progressive is it's growing. It's absolutely incredible to be a part of a company like this. It's innovative. It's so exciting to see what's coming next, and where we're going, kind of in this virtual healthcare space. I think that we were, as healthcare in general was kind of moving in this direction. COVID really sped it up quite a bit. So it's the culture at Let's Get Checked has just been very progressive, and it's an amazing company for sure.
Awesome. And we asked you, what's your favorite part about working there? You said being part of a brilliant team that is transforming the delivery of healthcare. And do you have are you all virtual? Do you go in? Are you remote? What's going on there?
So it depends on the position. We are a remote first company, but obviously those that are working in our labs are in the lab. Those that have our offices that are open, they're able to do more of a hybrid approach. But the majority of our team is remote. Yeah, but brilliant is an understatement when it comes to our team.
I bet, like you said, all the sciencey things that they're exploring, right, and teaching us and helping us with. So thank you all for what you're doing. And any top tips for someone who is interviewing for a job potentially at Let's Get Checked? They are hiring. Be prepared, know the company, understand the role, and take advantage of the opportunity. That's for any company, right?
Exactly. Yes, yeah. Exactly. It really is such a learning experience for everybody involved, and just definitely take advantage of every learning opportunity that you can.
Love that. Well, in the last just 2 minutes here, is there any way that folks can stay connected to you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are there other places you would recommend that they check out?
Yeah, we have All Places Social as well. So you can certainly follow Let's Get Checked on all those different platforms. I do personally have a LinkedIn account that you're welcome to connect with me there, as well as Let's Get Checked is on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And any last thoughts, maybe any other topics that we didn't touch on, or any things that you would like to impart on us to stay healthy today?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. So I think the main thing is just we covered a lot, and don't feel overwhelmed by what we covered. Whatever resonated with you and you can take and run with is going to help. So if it was just getting a little bit more water or incorporating an apple instead of a bag of chips, whatever you took from this and whatever resonated with you is what I recommend starting with.
I love that. And there was a lot of chatter here about just like, oh yeah, sleep is really important. I kind of forgot about that. So take a nap, try to get those 8 hours in every day if you can, or maybe it's 6 for you at a certain folks are good with 6, but getting your baseline and routine, right? I think we talked a lot about routine and finding what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. That consistency is important, but that doesn't mean perfection.
Progress, not perfection, right?
Love it. Yeah. My kids make fun of me for saying that.
Oh, really? Well, before they know it, they'll be saying it once they grow
I
up.
know.
That's how it works. Well, thank you so much, Megan, so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for your participation. We hope to have you back. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And make sure you rest up, okay?
Yes. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Likewise.